Let's have a rip with firmware 28.05 on the AXFX3. There's some remastered high gain models as well as some general modeling improvements. I want to start out with the JVM model, specifically the OD1 orange mode. That's my favorite mode on the real amp. And like the real amp, these have bucket loads of gain. So I'd recommend starting with the gain around 2 or 3. Similarly on the master volume, everything else to taste. I'm playing a 1990 Les Paul Custom with a pair of burst buckers straight into the AXFX3. I've got my free cab IR, which you can grab from the video description, along with a touch of the studio reverb over here. I've gone through and I've dialed a bunch of these into my blocks library, which I've also just updated. So if you've already gone and got the blocks library, that's available as a free update. Otherwise, if you want to grab my blocks library for the AXFX3, FM9 and FM3, it's linked in the video description. But for now, let's make some big filthy guitar noises. Those JVM models are pretty fantastic. There's a very good reason that it has been Marshall's longest produced flagship amplifier. I like that the OD1 models are a little more classic Marshall, whereas the OD2 models are a little more aggressive, tight and modern sounding on there. As an aside, if you want to see an interview with the man who designed the real JVM, Santiago Alvarez, I'll put a link to an interview that I did for the Gear podcast at the end of this video. Santiago is an absolute legend and those amps sound great. Well, we're talking about Marshalls, the Brit 800-2203 high, sounding fantastic on this firmware. There has been an update which will affect amps like the JCM 800s, the Soldanos and the Boogies on there, anything with a cold clipper circuit if you're into that kind of technical discussion. But let's just hear this quickly with some AC/DC. few updates to the Boogie models as well. The Mark IV and Mark II C+ models have been remastered along with the Recto 2 models. So let's start out with Recto 2 Red Modern. We'll play some new metal style stuff on here. Then I'll go over to a couple of different configurations on the Mark IV. I think the Tri-Axis Lead 2 models as well have had a remaster. They're all sounding pretty filthy and awesome. Juicy stuff. The Solo 88 models, the model of the Soldano X88, has also been remastered. I've got the X88IR, the reissue of that preamp sitting here as well. So I did a very quick A/B with my favorite settings on the preamp and these. They sound really close, and I kind of ended up on these settings here. Now the X88IR does have power amp modeling and IR loading with a couple of just preset voicings for the power amp. So I found, in order to get as close to that as possible, setting the presence and depth to 3, having the master volume low, and using the Loadbox LB2 UK impedance curve over here got me closest there. So let's just have a listen to Solo 88 Rhythm, Unboosted, and Lead on there. These are really great models if you want a little bit more of that late 80s, early 90s feel out of a high gain sound. They're nowhere near as like tight as something like the Boogies. They've got this kind of like fluffiness and hair to them that I really like. awesome with like a neck single coil on a Strat or a Tele as well. All right, that's some good fun with firmware 28.05. I'll play you all out maybe with the Solo 88 lead and this delay on the JTG. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what amp models and other effects you're using in your fractal rig. And again, if you want to grab my free IR or my blocks library, or check out some of the music that I make with my band Ragdoll, it's all linked in the video description. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.